Someone asks you for a favor you don't have time for. You feel the no forming somewhere in your chest, and then you hear yourself say, "Yeah, of course, no problem." You didn't decide to say yes. It happened before you had time to decide anything. And an hour later, you're quietly furious at yourself, wondering why you keep doing this, why saying two letters, N and O, feels almost physically impossible, even when everything in you wants to say them. If this sounds familiar, you've probably heard of fight, flight, and freeze. Three famous stress responses everybody learns about at some point. But there's a fourth one. It doesn't get nearly as much attention, and it's the one most likely to be quietly running your entire life without you ever naming it.
Let's start with the three you already know, because understanding why the fourth one got left out is actually the key to this whole video. Fight is confrontation. Flight is escape. Freeze is shutting down, going still, waiting for the threat to pass. All three of these make intuitive sense as survival strategies. You can picture an animal doing exactly this in the wild. But in the 1990s, a therapist named Pete Walker, who specialized in complex trauma, noticed something in his patients that didn't fit any of those three categories. A pattern of relentless people-pleasing, constant appeasing, and almost involuntary instinct to make themselves agreeable, useful, and non-threatening to whoever they were with. He called it the fourth F, fawn. And unlike the other three, fawning doesn't look like a threat response at all. It looks like kindness. It looks like being easygoing. It looks, to almost everyone watching from the outside, like a personality trait. That's exactly why it's the one nobody catches.
Here's the mechanism, and it starts for most people a lot earlier than they'd expect. Imagine a child growing up in a home where a parent's mood is unpredictable, not necessarily abusive in an obvious way, just unpredictable. Sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes suddenly angry over something small. In an environment like that, a child can't fight back. That's dangerous. They can't run away, there's nowhere to go, and freezing doesn't actually make an unpredictable parent safer. So the nervous system finds a fourth option. Scan constantly for what the parent needs. Anticipate their mood before it shifts. Become agreeable, helpful, easy, invisible in all the right ways so that the unpredictable threat has less reason to appear in the first place. This isn't a personality choice a child makes. It's a survival strategy their nervous system builds, often before they even have language for what they're doing. And here's the part that explains everything about adulthood. That strategy worked. It kept the peace. It made the environment safer, at least for.
This is why fawning is so easy to miss in adults, including in yourself. It doesn't announce itself as fear. It shows up as things our culture actively praises. Being the reliable one who never says no. Being easy to work with. Always checking how everyone else is feeling before checking in with your own. Apologizing reflexively, even for things that clearly aren't your fault. Feeling a genuine flash of anxiety at the idea of someone, anyone, being mildly annoyed with you. None of these look like trauma responses from the outside. They look like good qualities, which means the people running this pattern often get rewarded.
Here's where it gets more specific and more useful, because fawning isn't just being nice. There's a particular internal experience that separates it from genuine kindness, and once you see the difference, you can't unsee it. Genuine kindness comes from a feeling of abundance. You help because you want to, and saying no when you need to doesn't produce real fear. Fawning comes from a feeling of threat. Underneath the agreeable surface, there's often a specific physical anxiety attached to the idea of disappointing someone. Not mild discomfort, actual nervous system activation, a racing heart, a tight chest, a genuine sense that something bad might happen if you don't comply. This is the tell researchers point to again and again. It's not whether you say yes. Almost everyone says yes sometimes. It's what happens in your body at the mere thought of saying no. If that thought produces something closer to fear than simple preference, that's not a personality trait talking. That's an old survival system, still running its original program.
There's a specific connection here that reframes a lot of adult relationships, and it's worth sitting with. Researchers studying attachment have found that fawning connects closely to anxious attachment style. Adults who learned early that love or safety could disappear unpredictably, and who now stay hyper alert to any sign that a partner, friend, or boss might be pulling away. A slightly delayed text reply, a slightly flatter tone than usual. To someone with this wiring, these tiny signals can trigger the exact same nervous system response as an actual threat, because on some level, deep in the body, they still are one. This is why people who fawn often describe relationships that look from the outside completely fine, but feel from the inside exhausting.
They're not just being present in the relationship, they're constantly monitoring it, adjusting to it, managing it, usually without realizing that's what they're doing.
Now here's the twist that changes how you should think about all of this. Fawning isn't weakness, and it isn't a character flaw. It was, at some point, genuinely intelligent. A child who accurately reads an unpredictable environment and adapts their behavior to stay safe within it is doing exactly what a nervous system is built to do. The strategy wasn't wrong, it was correct for the environment it was built in. The problem isn't that the strategy exists, it's that nervous systems are slow to update. They don't automatically recognize when the original danger is gone. A boss who's mildly annoyed is not a parent whose love felt conditional. A friend who's briefly quiet is not an unpredictable caregiver. But the old system doesn't know the difference unless it's specifically taught to. It just recognizes the pattern, disapproval, distance, tension, and runs the same program it always has.
So what actually helps if you recognize this pattern in yourself? The research consistently points away from simply trying to say no more, because that instruction alone usually just produces more anxiety layered on top of an already anxious system. The more useful first step is noticing the physical sensation itself in the moment it happens, that tightness in your chest right before you agree to something you don't want to do. Learning to recognize that specific feeling as information, not as a command you're obligated to obey. The second is practicing what therapists sometimes call the pause. Not a dramatic confrontation, just a small gap between the request and your automatic yes. "Let me check and get back to you" is a complete sentence, and it interrupts the automatic reflex just long enough for an actual choice to happen, instead of a survival response disguised as one. And the third, according to research on earned secure attachment, is exposure in safe relationships, practicing small, low-stakes moments of disagreement or preference with people who won't punish you for it. Each time
If you recognized yourself somewhere in this video, here's the thing worth remembering as we close. The instinct that makes you agreeable, that makes it hard to disappoint people, that scans every room for tension before you've even had a chance to just exist in it, wasn't a flaw. It was, once, exactly the right response to keep you safe. The goal was never to become someone who stops caring about other people. It's to help an old, brilliant survival system finally learn something it's been missing this entire time, that the threat it's still protecting you from isn't there anymore.
If this changed how you think about the way you show up in your relationships, hit like and subscribe. Every week we dig into the psychology behind the things your mind does without asking your permission. And I want to know, was there a specific moment you can trace this back to, or has it just always felt like this? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. See you in the next one.